Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast at GCN in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. And the call-in number, if you'd like to call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 712-770-9418. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Just fine. You know, your voice sounds muffled. Almost sounds like you're talking into your phone through a towel.
You know what? It sounds kind of muffled, too. Actually.
Does it really? Okay.
Yeah. I'm sitting like I normally do, so I think that it's probably just a bad line.
Okay. Well,
we'll hang up and then call me back, maybe.
Okay. Jason, can you disconnect and have her or call her back, please? Okay. Very good. All right, we're going to try that and see how that works. And in the meantime, I mentioned yesterday that the mail is delayed, and you all know that. And because the mail is delayed, it's a problem for getting your paper statements paid on time. And it's kind of frustrating. And what happens is the late fees pile up, the interest piles up, the penalties pile up. And so with Capital One, if you have one of their credit cards issued with the Menards store name on it, if you're late, there's a $27 late fee. So let's say you spent $100 at Menards. You get your statement for $100, and they say that it arrived late because they want it 10 days before the due date, which is almost impossible. Well, you owe them $100 plus the $27 late fee. It doesn't set well with me. Yeah. Okay. That late fee doesn't set well with me. So I always call and say, we mailed it on time. And I can't help the mail system, United States Postal Service. Would you please remove that late fee? And they always do. Now, if you're a habitual late payment type, they're probably not going to do it. But, if you have a good history of paying your bills on time, they look at that. And they realize that there's problems with COVID-19. They realize that there's delays with the Postal Service. And generally speaking, they will give you the credit. Same with the phone bill if that's late, or any other bill if it's late. So I suggest that you take care of yourself and put yourself first in terms of trying to give these companies more and more of your revenue when they don't deserve it. So if it's a bona fide issue of being late because of the U.S. mail and you didn't do it, then call them up and get your credit. And if enough of us do that and complain, the banks, the credit card companies, the stores, all those companies that we pay with paper checks, if enough of us complain legitimately because of the postal delays, then the Postal Service will have to do one of two things. They'll either fix it because the stores will beat them up and the stores will beat up their Congress critters and so forth, or they'll do nothing. So it's one of those two things, and I think they'll fix it. So Guineith is with us back. Guineith, let's see if if your connection got any better.
I'm back now. Does that sound better?
About 1%. But let's go with it.
Gosh. Yeah,
So,
okay.
Guineith, I got your email. Wow. You and I are on the same page, but not everybody agrees with us.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about where we're headed. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, there's a little town, it's around about, about 50 miles from here. That town's called Clunes. And back in the 1970s, there was a movie made in the town of Clunes called Mad Max. And it was made in 1978, was released in 1979. And I think that's where we're headed. And, because it was released in 1981 in the United States, and it was released under the name of Road Warrior. So, but basically it's the same movie, but for whatever reason they redubbed certain sections of it and edited it for the American audience. I don't understand why. So I think that's where we're headed. And actually I could quite imagine that movie coming to pass around here, because literally the roads that are in that movie are the roads that are around here, and the mountains that are in that movie are the mountains that are around here. That is fairly close to the location where I live. It's oh my gosh. If you ever want to go and see that movie, basically the world goes into a systemic collapse, but it's not something that happens suddenly. Like at the beginning of the movie, everything's more or less normal, although a very weird sort of normal, because their version of the Blue Team has basically gone a little bit psychotic. But you've got a gangland community that's probably as crazy as what the police are. And they're basically having a war on the roads, and there's this sort of apocalyptic systemic collapse going on in the background, and you're not quite sure what's happening, what's causing it. And I think that that's actually pretty close to what's happening today, because it's just going crazy here in Victoria. The latest is that you're now going to have drones spying on people at the beach and in parks in Melbourne to make sure that they all stay 6 feet apart, and to make sure people are wearing their masks. And these drones are going to be owned by the Victoria Police. And this was broadcast on Channel 7 News, which is one of the main news programs here, and it was picked up by Paul Joseph Watson and broadcast on yesterday's Alex Jones show. So that's my source for the info here. It sounds crazy. It's like I went to sleep and woke up inside the most dystopic science fiction movie that you could possibly imagine. And out here, it's pretty much normal out here on the farm. Really nothing has changed, except that there's actually fewer Blue Team members roaming around, which is kind of nice. But that's because they're all in places like Bendigo and Melbourne and other, medium to large type towns, because they're after the revenue. We are in a state of systemic collapse here in Victoria. And, my only comfort is that I'm thinking to myself, well, in a year or two's time, we'll have a lot less sheep to deal with, of the two-legged kind, because just about everything that they're advising people to do is going to end up harming and killing them, Even the mask. I posted a video, I posted a photo on my Facebook page. I'm pretty sure I posted it on my Facebook page. I know I sent it to you, Vincent. What the masks are doing to people's faces. And if that's what they're doing, they're sending people's faces up into a rash. And if that's what they're doing to the skin on the outside of their faces, what's it doing to their throat, to their sinuses, to their lungs, to their, vocal cords, and so on and so forth? People need, part of the purpose of breathing out is you breathe out toxins in your breath. And when you're wearing these masks, the toxins are trapped against your face, and they're trapped inside your body, and they build up there. And that's what causes the rashes, and it's causing an insanity in the minds of the people, that and the hypoxia, which is a build-up of carbon dioxide and not enough oxygen in the blood that kills people's brain cells and it weakens the immune system. They're using this coronavirus as a full-on excuse for tyranny here in Victoria, and it's just absolutely disgusting. And, the only thing that I can do is to rant and rave and jump up and down and shout about it and maybe wake some people up. But the only thing you can do at the moment is get out of Melbourne, whatever way you can. Get out of any big town that you can and basically go bush. That is, even if you have to camp out, even if you have to be homeless, you are better being homeless with a bush camp, with a little fireplace and a tent. You're better living that way at the moment here in Victoria than living in a town. And if you're on a farm, that's good. You should stay on the farm. But if you don't have a farm, and if you live in a town, even like towns like Bendigo, Maryborough, other towns that are around here, you should leave those towns now, and you should go out and find somewhere in the forest just to camp and just to live. Because, my gosh, this is going to get really bad. This is Hitler's most amazing dream come true on steroids. And most people are climbing into the boxcars willingly, from what I can see. Does that make sense, Vincent? I know it doesn't make sense, but, I don't know what else to say. I'm almost lost for words here.
Well, I'm in total agreement with you. And here's what I see. I've been thinking about this, and I was on the phone with a couple of our instructors in the last couple of days, just a couple of phone calls, short phone calls. And I mentioned that I have this theory, and I have not fleshed it out yet. But it's a theory about the coronavirus damaging our brains to the point where we have lost our filters, or some of us have lost our filters. And so if we see it, we say it. If it bothers us, we react and we go ballistic. And violence is the result of this. And I'll flesh that out a little bit more when we come back with Guineith Isaacs in Australia. Class, it's kind of amazing how Guineith Isaacs and I and Rich Sheben and some of our other instructors all think independently of the same thing, and we come up with the same conclusions. It's really interesting. And then we talk about it, and we go, yeah, so I was thinking the same thing. And we're not making it up. It just happens. So about this little theory that I have, I can't prove it. But what I was thinking is, if you look at the police, you look at the Proud Boys, the Black Lives Matter guys, gals, the Aryan Nation, the National Guard, the City Police, the Neighborhood Watch, the mothers, the fathers, the young adults, out there protesting, chanting, bullhorns. You look at that, and then there's violence that erupts, and then the crowd goes into violence, and there's rocks and stones being thrown and bottles and frozen water bottles, and then there's Molotov cocktails. And then there are the laser pointers, and then there are the guns, and then there's the tear gas, and et cetera, and the escalation. And there's shields. It's like warfare with the Vikings in some instances. And but the other team, the police, has sound cannons. They have tear gas launchers. They have smoke bombs. They have flashbang grenades, and they have real cartridges with real full metal jacket bullets. And they have rubber bullets, and they have tasers, and they have nightsticks and billy clubs, and they've got body armor. And so it's kind of lopsided right now, but I don't think it's going to stay lopsided. It seems to me that the coronavirus has attacked the mind. And as I said, I cannot prove this, but it appears to me that if you look at some of the results and you look at some of what's happening, you might be able to see it as well. And so the filter that would be the filter to prevent you from seeing someone in Walmart and then saying, well, there's an ugly one. That filter, or who in their right mind would dress like that? That filter, and the ones that prevent us from walking up to someone with a baseball bat and just striking them just because they're there. That filter. It seems like those filters are decaying very, very quickly. And that is what Mad Max is. Mad Max is, part of Mad Max is devolving into spontaneous violence. Just because there's someone there and a person feels like extracting blood. It just happens. And then gangs do it, and then leaders form. And then there are these leaders of these violent gangs. And add to that the supply chain, which broke. Add to that the grid, which is gone. The wires are still there, some of them, but there's no current flowing through them. So the world that depends on electricity is changed instantly. Well, when the grid goes down completely. But it devolves over a period of time. But it may seem like it takes a long time for this to devolve. But if you look around you, you can see it's happening really fast. Really fast. All of a sudden, you couldn't get latex gloves. You couldn't get toilet paper. You couldn't get paper towels. You couldn't get soap. You couldn't get hand sanitizer. That happened almost instantly. Now there's a coin shortage. So you want to pay cash for something and you can't get change. You can't give change and you can't get change. So what do? Do you round up or do you round down? You say, I'll tell you what, let's just make it to the closest dollar bill or the closest $5 bill or the closest 20 or closest 100. What do? So things that we used to take for granted, like the post office, the U.S. mail, a couple days to get a letter from here to there, maybe 3 days at the most. That's all stopped. And the information from the media, you can read the same websites a couple days apart, and it'll say things are great, and then things are terrible. And there's a mask ordinance. You have to wear a mask. And then that afternoon, it's no, that's been rolled back. And then the next morning, it's not rolled back. It's enforced again. So people don't know what to do, and they're really losing their minds and their tempers. And add that to the filters that have been destroyed, if that's true, by the COVID-19. That's where we are, and it's getting worse. We'll be right back. Guineith is with us, live in Australia. And if you just heard the bottom of the hour news, you heard that the Postmaster General said that they're not going to be removing postal mailboxes until after the election. Now, just think about that for a second. One of the things that we actually think is important for the U.S. government to do is to deliver the mail promptly, accurately, and without bias. And the Postmaster General is saying that they have removed those outdoor mailboxes, those industrial mailboxes that have been around since the 40s, maybe the 1930s, maybe even before then. And they stood the test of time. They're still, I mean, they work great, a brilliant design. You just open the door, drop your mail in. Thieves can't steal the mail. They work really well. And they're removing them. Now the question is why? It makes absolutely no sense. So those of us who pay our bills by mail and those of us who have late fees attached because the U.S. mail is delayed intentionally in delivering the mail, we might be told, well, you know, the problem is really us. The problem is that you guys expect to be able to do it the old-fashioned way. You know, pay your bills with paper checks through the paper mail system. All you have to do is go electronic. So what's wrong with going electronic? Well, I'll tell you what. We have had people call our house saying that the internet is down in their area. Widespread outage. Their bill is due, and they can't pay their water bill, their electric bill, their credit card bill. Would we please pay it for them? Electronically. Because at that moment, our internet was working and theirs didn't. Now, is it possible that theirs would work and ours wouldn't? Of course. So those who think that the electronic system is the be-all, end-all, and is up 24/7 are absolutely wrong. There is no up 24/7 for anything. Not even the U.S. mail. Because sometimes it's rain and sleet and snow and flooding and those kinds of things. The mail trucks break down. You know, the mail comes every time at the same day at our place, except when it doesn't. And why doesn't it? Well, because the mail Jeep overheated, the mail Jeep had a flat tire, the mail gal or guy got sick, and the replacement has no clue where he or she is going. Those kind of things. So we've come to depend on things that are not going to be around. And what Guineith said with Mad Max is absolutely, positively a scenario that I envision as happening. And I believe we've already started it. Guineith, back to you.
Yeah, after that first Mad Max movie, the storyline goes on to, you get beyond Thunderdome and then you get Fury Road. It gets worse and worse. It doesn't get any better. You find out that the world has been contaminated with nuclear radiation. Fortunately, here in Australia, we don't have very many nuclear reactors. So, but there are a few in the middle of, I think there's one actually just outside of our capital city of Canberra, which is, maybe a bit of nuclear radiation might do that place a bit of good. I don't know. Sarcasm there. I think there's one in Sydney, but I don't know that there's very many others in this country. So that's maybe a good thing for us. But, there's other problems which are, like you say, people are not thinking. I don't know. Personally, I think that it's the mask causing brain damage. I think that that's what it is. And that, that the various toxins are building up inside people's bodies and are actually causing their brains and their nervous systems to malfunction. Personally, I mean, that's just my non-medical, just common sense, humble opinion. But that's what I think. But I think you're definitely right. People are not thinking straight. And, even people that, they sometimes you can tell. Like, when I go on Facebook, I sometimes go on common law type groups and just sort of just go and hang out and try and see if I can contribute something positive. And I hear people saying things on there like, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Maybe Q will solve it, or, some other outside force is going to come and make it all better. Incidentally, I think that Jesus Christ is coming back, and I think he's coming back really soon, like within the next few years. But I don't think that he's going to solve this set of problems that we're facing at the moment, because this is called the apocalypse. And in Bible prophecy, it's prophesied that the apocalypse would happen before Jesus comes back, and that he comes back to a world full of chaos. And as far as I can see, a world full of chaos is exactly what is developing right now. You know, it's mind-blowing that people think that everything is going to be okay when clearly things are not okay. Things are not going to be okay. Then there's going to be no going back to the way things were. Okay? The new normal that they're all on about is actually a full systemic collapse. And I think I wrote in the email that I sent to you earlier about that we are going to have to just learn to make do with whatever we have around us to make whatever we need to make, to get whatever we need to get, to grow whatever we can grow. And we need to guard our properties against people who would seek to make our stuff their stuff. In other words, we need to guard against banditry, because that is going to become a huge problem. And I've been going on and on and on about it in my own personal work, in my YouTube videos, and in my Facebook posts, and so on and so forth. I'll just, by the way, if anyone wants to send me a friend request on my Facebook page, if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, go to YouTube or go to Facebook and just search for Guineith Isaacs, and you'll find me. And I think I'm the only Guineith Isaacs who's there. But, you know, you've got to recognize things are not going to go back to normal. This is going to get worse. We're facing such monumental problems, I hardly even have words for them anymore. You know? Oh gosh, just imagine that you cannot buy any of the stuff that you are used to buying on a regular basis. If you have a regular consumable that you need to buy, how are you going to get by without that? Like, for instance, with me, I'm thinking to myself, right, I have a horse and I have dogs. How am I going to feed my horse and my dogs? You know, that's an issue. And, you know, summer is going to be here soon. At the moment, my horse can eat grass. But in the summertime, the grass will stop growing, and it will dry off, and it will brown off, and it will die. So should I just aim to gradually accumulate a couple of years' worth of hay and gradually feed it out to her? And, you know, dog food, how am I going to come about dog food? Can I use the horse to go out searching for carcasses? Roadkill, you know, that's a possibility. That's definitely a possibility. But this is what this is what everybody has to think about. And I cannot reiterate it strongly enough. Here, we are further down the track in Victoria than just about anywhere else in the world. And, you know, my husband Archie, he was a seer. He foresaw that this would happen, that we would end up in a Mad Max world just before Jesus comes back. But, you know, you've got to think, wherever you are headed anywhere on the earth. We are all headed for a major systemic collapse. And how are you going to organize? How are you going to get all those things that you need to get? What are you going to do? Are you going to, like, for instance, another thing that we have here personally at our place, we operate using solar power, but one of the things we operate using the solar power is pumps, water pumps. I have to make decisions. Am I going to buy more fencing wire to reinforce the fences on my farm to make it harder for people to get in, or am I going to buy water pumps? You know, spare water pumps so that if I have a pump failure, I can pull another pump out of the box and just go and replace it. These are the things that I'm considering, and I'm not going to, I may not be able to do everything, and I have to make priorities of what I'm going to do, you know. And this is what occupies my mind pretty well all the time. And there's lots of things that I would love to do. One thing that I would love to do, one thing that I am doing is getting a fruit orchard happening with especially apple trees and plum trees. And I already have, hundreds of nopal cactus plants growing. But, you know, the thing is that if you can have a good supply of fruit and vegetables, that keeps your vitamin C levels up. That increases your immunity. You know, and this is what everybody has to be thinking of. And if you are in a suburban environment, oh my gosh, you need to have a good, long, hard think about what you're going to do, because you are going to find yourself in the eye of the storm. You think that you're happy in your little suburban block. Well, once upon a time, I thought I was happy in my little suburban block, and my whole world fell apart through circumstances I won't go into here. And I had to leave there in a big hurry. What are you going to do? I didn't want to leave. I was really, really happy on my little suburban block, but I had to leave it. And the circumstances were beyond my control and were definitely threatening to my entire family's existence as a family. But, oh my gosh, you have to think, suburbs are going to be the worst places to be. Melbourne is a gigantic concentration camp. It's got 5 million people living in it, and the police have blocked off all the major roads in and out. People cannot leave. I've got friends who live in Melbourne. They have land around here. I keep mentioning this. They bought the land in bug-out locations, and they can't get to the bug-out locations because when the police shut the roads down, it was no warning. Boom, in went the blockade, and they couldn't get out. The whole city was turned into a gigantic ghetto. They ghettoized the city of 5 million people. This is
Class,
now.
this is right
this
now.
Is happening now. And I'm at Vincent, and they can't get out here.
Hold that thought. Class, Guineith was teaching you about something called constrained optimization. And very simply, she was talking about fencing and a water pump. And let me just give you an exclamation point of what she was saying. So she has a choice. Now, let's say she has available $200. And that is the constraint. She has $200 available and no more, just $200. And she has to choose between fence posts, fence wire, and a water pump. And so the fence wire costs $120, and the fence post costs $60. So she can buy fence post and fence wire. 60 and 120 is $180. She's within the $200. That works fine. But she needs a water pump, and the water pump is $120. So she can't buy the fence wire and the water pump for $120 each because that puts her over budget. That's $240. She can't do that. She could buy the water pump for $120, and she could buy the fence post for $60. That's $180. But she doesn't have the fence wire that she needs. So what she's talking about is what is described in the world of finance as constrained optimization. Now, why did I spend the extra time on that? Because that's where we are. We are now living in a world of constrained optimization. What do you have, and how do you make it the best it can be? How do you optimize what you have within the constraints that you have? Make the best of what you have. That's what we're talking about. And here in our at our farm, I have a jug. It's a 1 gallon clear plastic jug that cranberry juice came in years ago. Now, I could have thrown that away. And most of all of those that are ever made are in landfills or have been incinerated or been dumped in the ocean. Okay, that's where they've gone. But I have a bunch of them that I saved. Now, do they take space? Absolutely. I wash the labels off. Mrs. Finelli washes the labels off. And every day I cart water to the chickens with it. There's nothing better for the purpose that I have, which is bringing water to the chickens, than this 1 gallon used cranberry juice jug. There's nothing better than that. Now, we're going to find out that we shouldn't have thrown things away because we can't get any more of those jugs. Because who's buying cranberry juice now? We're not. So all the jugs that, would replace those that we might have thrown away, we're not getting them anymore. And you're going to find out that there are a whole bunch of things that are useful that you have previously thrown away, like tin cans or steel cans. They call them tin cans, but they're steel cans, like the size that cat food and tuna fish came in. Why? Because you can put small parts in there. You can wash out small parts. You can thin out paint thinner with your paint to make it go farther. You can mix it in those little cans. And that's the kind of things we're talking about. The world as we know it is slowly, well, actually not slowly, faster than we'd like, changing. And I don't like it. I really don't like it. Because where are you going to get the things that you need? Where are you going to get that eyedropper, that glass eyedropper, to put a drop of castor oil, USP, in each one of your eyes at bedtime before going to sleep so you can dissolve those cataracts? Where are you going to get that glass eyedropper? We've been throwing those away for years. Probably 99.999% of all the eyedroppers that have ever been made are in landfills. Where are you going to get your next one? This is the way farmers think. This is the way Guineith thinks. This is the way Rich Eben and I think. And Kyle and a whole bunch of us. Sharon, Kathy. This is the way we think. Because we have to. And those who don't think this way are subject to an awful rude awakening. Because I really believe you're not going to be able to get the things that you considered ubiquitous. Anywhere you want to get it, you can get it. And we're going to find out that you can't. And it's going to be awful. You're going to find out that shoelaces, from those sneakers where you threw them away, should have kept the shoelaces. Where are you going to get shoelaces? And even if they don't match, you'll be delighted to have blue shoelaces on white sneakers. Or one blue and one black on white sneakers. Believe me, it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. David is calling in from Illinois. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. I'd love to hear what Guineith's thoughts are on what I just said about not throwing things away because you probably can use them later. And I'd love to hear what David has to say. We'll be right back. I'm Vincent Finelli. This is USA Prepares. Class, I believe, are going down. I believe that no matter who wins the election here in the United States, the other party is going to be furious, and the eruption will ensue. Mark my words. I'll be delighted to receive your calls later, and you can tell me I was wrong. I'd be delighted to say you're correct. I was wrong, but I doubt it. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. David is on the phone. Guineith, first I mentioned constrained optimization. I talked about saving gallon jugs, cans, etc., shoelaces, things that we would throw away in the good old days, and they may become really valuable in the days to come. Any comments?
I didn't know it had a name. I just did it.
Yeah.
I had no idea it had a name. This is just my thought processes. What am I going to buy this week? Am I going to buy, more fence and wire? Or, gee, I really do need a spare pump hanging around. And this is, there's nothing wrong with my pumps, okay? but I'm aware that I may need to buy 2 or 3 pumps, and these pumps might cost like $250 each. And that's from my local big box hardware store, and it may not be possible for me to get into the big box hardware store for much longer, which means that I'd have to order them online and so on and so forth. You know, that's something else I would have to investigate. But there's more to it than that, because it's, what was that phrase? Constrained optimization.
That's right.
Of time. Because I get up in the morning and I'm sitting down and I'm having my cup of tea and I'm having my breakfast cereal. They have a breakfast cereal here in Australia called Weet-Bix, okay? It's like 99% wheat flakes pressed into a biscuit. And so it's got like 1% salt just to stop it from rotting. And you have that with some milk, and I have it normally with either some banana on top or other fruits that I have, maybe some preserved nopal cactus fruit. That's a favourite at the moment because you've got lots and lots of it. And that's off of my own cactuses on my own place that I bottled. But the thing is, I'm sitting there, I'm having my breakfast, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do today? Okay, like, for example, this morning, I said, right, well, I've got that fence wire to put up on that fence that I'm building, but I've got to dig another hole, because about twice a week I have to dig a hole to dispose of horse manure. And so I dig and at the moment I'm also using these holes to dispose of plastic bags. Okay, this is like food package wrappings and such like, so food-grade plastic. Because you buy flour, you buy, any food stuff, you buy pasta, you buy anything that all comes in plastic bags, and that means you just got way too many, food packaging packets, plastic bags generally, lying around the place. And what I do is I dig about half a cubic metre to 1 cubic metre of soil in a hole which is maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, 3 feet long, and the Z-axis is between 3 and 4 feet deep, okay? And then I put the plastic bags down on it, and I put a layer of wood chips on the top of that, which comes from our chopping pile. We chop our wood using an axe around here. I live inside a eucalyptus forest. There's never a shortage of wood here. It's just trees drop their branches in every high wind, and you just go out in the forest and pick them up. And these trees are hundreds of years old. They'll grow more branches. That's just how they do it. And but anyway, we gather the wood, we chop it, but that means we've got too many wood chips. So I get a barrow load of wood chips and I put it on top of a layer of plastic bags, and then I fill the hole up to the top with horse manure, because of course I have stables to muck out and stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, I've gotten rid of my plastic bags, I've gotten rid of some of the wood chips, and I have a place to plant a tree in the future. This is it. But to make one of these holes is about 3 or 4 hours work, because I'm middle-aged. I have, I wish I was a lot fitter and stronger. And I would say that I'm actually a lot fitter and a lot stronger and a lot healthier than a lot of other people out there. But I have physical challenges that I have to deal with. So a hole that might take someone else 90 minutes to dig will take me twice the time to dig. It will take me about 3 hours to dig, but I just keep going at it and I get it done, But this is it. I say, oh my gosh, I've got to dig that hole. I'm just running out of places to put the horse poop. And so but I have to say, well, the fence will have to wait for another day. I've got to dig that hole. And this
so,
is
Guineith,
controlled optimization of time. Does that make sense?
Well,
this is what people have to think about.
Here's a way of looking at this, class. Constrained optimization takes time, money, supplies, labor. There's spoilage, there's breakage, there's theft. You might need electricity. And here's what I mean. Let's say you're doing a task like pumping water or getting water. How much time does it take to do that? Do you have the time? How much money does it cost to do it? Do you have the supplies to do it? Can you get more of those supplies? How about labor? Do you have enough people to do it? How about spoilage? Will it spoil before you finish it or use it? How about breakage? How many of them will break while you're making it? Will it be theft? Will it be stolen while you're making it or after you finish it? And what about electricity? Do you have the electricity? Do you need the electricity to do it? Will it be available? Those are just some of the things that, some of the ingredients that go into the constrained optimization. There's lots of potential problems that go along with making and doing things, gardening, for example. One of the constraints might be fertilizer. It might be compost. It might be seeds. It might be water. It might be the weather. It might be the time. It might be the theft. It might be the predators, the animals that like your harvest just as much or more than you do, and they get up in the middle of the night and you don't. So those are some things to think about. David, welcome. You're on with Guineith Isaacs and me.
How you guys doing today?
How you doing? Yeah. How you
doing? A long night here, so. Anyways, I briefly wanted to mention. Did you hear the news article a minute before this, where actually somebody was throwing bananas at the Harlem Globetrotters? I mean, you talk about losing it. I mean, this has gone ridiculous. Yeah. But now they're even claiming that Trump is out there at night picking up mailboxes and putting them on flatbed trucks. I mean, this is nuts. You know, I mean, what he must have some heck of time in the world to be able to drive around at night.
Well, I didn't hear that. White House. I didn't hear that he was doing it, David, but I did read a story that they were picking up these mail collection boxes, these rounded topped, legged, bolted to the concrete mailboxes from 60 years ago.
But the first tweet,
that had been painted and painted.
Yeah. The first politician tweet female went and seen the pictures, and she was everywhere saying that he's doing this at night. He's out there doing this at night, picking these up, and he's doing it, is what they were saying. He's doing it. And I'm like, boy, he's got some heck of time on his hands. But anyways, I've been out there and seeing the shortages. Now, you brought up change, and I've been seeing the change situation. I don't know, is it that way in Australia as well? Are you having problems finding people accepting or being able to get access to currency, hard currency?
We're not having so much problems obtaining currency here at the moment, but we haven't had 1 and 2 cent pieces for about 20 years here. Or about 25 years. I think they did away with our 1 and 2 cent pieces back in about 1995. So, but I haven't had a lot of problems with getting change. I think that's a problem that you're facing before we will, but I've got no doubt that it is coming.
My thing about it is... Sorry.
Yeah, but they seem to be distributing the problems across different countries at the moment from what I've seen. So America's having a currency shortage. We are having a freedom shortage here in this country. Okay? Our freedoms are going down the water closet. They really are. They are being flushed as we speak. It's just absolutely disgusting.
Well, the reason I brought up about the change is I feel there's something that the big boys are really worried or planning ahead of time, because I've been checking into the change thing, and that, although people may think that's a simple just irritation, those are precious metals, and when you need precious metals for a war or a certain situation, you're going to get it the easiest way possible. And that easiest way possible is right there in your own stores and everything. So I was watching banks to see where this is going, and there's people talking that work in banks, and there's people trying to give their change to the banks thinking there's a shortage. The banks are refusing it because the feds already took out the machines, and they're destroying the money, the coins, but they're not replacing it.
Wow.
So what is going on where they're wanting coppers in serious metals, and what's it used for normally besides wire? You know, you use a lot of copper.
Well, it's used to make brass. Copper's used to make brass, and brass is used to make cartridges, and cartridges are used to make projectiles. Right. So, David, you bring up a very valid point. And class, you may not know this, but we used to use copper pennies for a long time. And in 1943, during World War II, we needed copper for making ammunition. And so the copper penny was replaced in 1943 with steel. So if you find, you can look it up. You can look up steel, as in the metals, S-T-E-E-L, pennies, steel pennies. And you'll find out that in 1943, during World War II, copper pennies were taken out of production, and they were replaced with steel pennies. And you might still find them in circulation. I don't know the current price. I'm sure you can find them on eBay. There's probably several dollars a piece for a penny that was made out of steel, which is worth less than a penny that's made out of copper in terms of the metal content. And a nickel is used to make nickels. And nickels are almost 100% nickel. So nickel's a pretty valuable material. Doesn't rust. So I'm thinking that pretty soon they're going to say, we don't need no stinking nickels made out of nickel. We'll just do away with them or replace them with something else. And that's coming. And we've already taken most of the copper out of pennies, starting in 1983, I believe it was. So class, up until and including 1982, pennies were made with copper. And currently, the value of the copper in a U.S. penny, 1982 and earlier, is about 1.9 cents. 1.8 to 1.9 cents. Just under 2 cents, the value of the copper in the penny. So a penny's worth 2 pennies in copper. Now, in the years 1943, pennies were made out of steel because the copper was needed for the war. In 1942 through 1945, nickel was really needed for the war effort. So much so that nickels were made with silver. So a U.S. nickel dated 1942, 43, and 45 were made with about 35% silver. 35% silver in a U.S. nickel. So a nickel that was made with that silver is worth about $1.53 right at this moment. Actually, $1.54. So little known facts about shortages and what things are worth. So silver was worth less during the war effort than nickel was. So they diluted the alloy of nickels with silver, 35%. There you have it. Just so you understand what shortages and pricing and supply and demand are a little bit about. David, back to you.
Yeah. Now, you brought up about people and emotions. Now, I have been out and they've notified me, because I've seen a lot of shelves that are still empty of different products this time. And I said, well, now we're dealing with a plastic shortage because of the virus. I'm like, you're kidding me. So I've seen that issue. But you were talking about stress and the people. You have a situation where these politicians are just messing with people's lives. Kids don't have no food. People are waiting in lines for hours. Now they're getting evicted. They're getting kicked out of even their cars. And they're upset with their children and everything while they're having a great old time. And you see these people on YouTube that are capitalizing off this, and they're telling them several times a day, oh, great news. your unemployment checks are going to be expanded as of now. You know, great news. Every day they're telling us where people are actually sitting there. I mean, some of the comments are being shut off because they are furious. And I don't blame them. They're losing it. I mean, and we are creating a ticking time bomb here. People can only take so much. And in my opinion, what they need to do is to get on there, get on the social media, get out to the world to let them know what they're doing here with some of these people. And then to see for the first time, maybe Russians or other countries bring some Antonovs over here with food supplies, water, and medical supplies and start landing in American cities and say, you won't take care of your people, we will. And that'll make them look like a bunch of fools on both sides. You know, maybe it'll take something like that to help these people.
I think what you're saying is that in different way, that it's hard for people to figure out exactly what's going on. They're being lied to. They're being pressured through eviction. Not being able to pay for the car, not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their mortgage, not having a job, shortages in the food supply, and yet the government says, "Oh yeah, we're gonna give you a big stimulus. We're gonna give you a big check this time. It's coming soon, soon." Yep. Soon.
Yep.
And people haven't gotten it, and you know they've promised their landlords, they promised their the companies that they owe money to, etc. That we'll pay you as soon as the government gives us our money, because they've shut down commerce, so we can't go back to work. And then there are other people who go to work and they just show up and they get paid for going to work because they're government employees. Now, I'm not making this up, class. There are people who work for the government who show up. People go to work for the government. They show up. They can't do anything because there's nothing to do. And yet the government doesn't want to fire them because that will add to the unemployment. So we just pay people to show up sometimes, not, 5 days a week, but just sometimes, and get full compensation for doing hardly any work at all. Because if we fire them, as we should, the unemployment numbers will go up and the government will look bad and the election's coming, and it's all interconnected and it's a mess.
And
we'll be right
give
back
you a good example.
I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure Guineith will as well. Class will be right back right after these bottom of the hour messages. Guineith is with us. David is in Illinois. David, you had a comment about some government employees not working, getting paid. You had an example?
Yes, example. I always told people, and they thought I was nuts until they actually seen it. There would be strikes for your private sector. Your government wouldn't get involved. People would be out of work. But look back at every time the government had a problem, even this last time where they didn't sign a budget for the government employees. There was an outrage. They had to sit there and wait. Now, a lot of them people would get past checks because they don't get paid immediately. So they got checks coming or vacation. But they wouldn't get, we can't have them out of work. Not only did they pay them, they sat there and said, now we shouldn't have to pay none of that back. Now we're going to get our regular pay back, too, for not working during this time. How can you ever see that in the private sector? No. They will stop everything. Plus, when I was a civil servant and others and was around them, I bet you I've seen them people work maybe 20 to 25% a day, 3 days a week. When you say they don't do nothing, they don't do nothing. I mean, I was shocked when I would see that.
I've been there.
And the amount of money they get in benefits is astounding. It's just amazing. People would be outraged, especially with them out of work and no money.
I was a state employee at one time, decades and decades ago. I was designing computer systems for the government. And there was the budget wasn't passed for the state. So there was an uproar. Oh, no, we have all these state employees and they're not going to be paid. And we were well compensated. Don't get me wrong. It's not like state employees don't make enough money to survive. That's not true. They do. And state employees don't think. They only follow rules. There are rule books, and they say, well, no, we're not allowed to do that because here's the law. Here's what we do. And they're like law enforcers at the paper level. But what I'm saying is that there were times in my life as an employee for the state government that the state did not have enough money to pay its employees. So what did they do? The state government passes what's called a continuing resolution. So we don't have a budget, but we're going to still pay these people. We don't have the money. It's not been approved, but we're going to pay them anyway. That's what a continuing resolution is. I was there. It happened. So government employees don't worry about getting paid because they get paid. Now, in the private sector, if you work for, let's say, J.C. Penney, and they say, you know what, it's not working so well. Customers aren't coming to the store. We're short on revenue. So all you guys, you're all laid off. That's how that works. Gwyneth, any comments?
Yeah, people who think that they work for the government think that they're on a good ticket. They think that they're going to get their check no matter what. But what they don't realise is that the ordinary Janes and Joes out there really despise them. And one day, all the Janes and Joes out there are going to start running out of patience. So I don't think that they're considering that. I think that they live, I've heard this word used a lot recently in the last few months. They're in a bubble, okay? They're in a bubble where all the people that they know are government workers and, you know, they're all getting their regular checks. There's never any worries about anybody. And, you know, they all like each other or not, but they get their regular checks, and if they have to deal with somebody who's a member of the general public, and then, you know, this public member is rude to them, well, they're just a pleb, and they might be in a situation where they can give this plebeian a bad time, and then that makes it all okay. They don't seem to realise that they are, you know, accumulating bad karma for themselves.
Okay,
and
so how about
I'm
this?
especially talking about blue team members here, but also things like municipal employees, okay? They only tend to hang around other municipal employees, other blue team members. They don't tend to have friends that are not outside that circle. And I think it's because other people, as soon as they find out that they're a municipal employee, a state government worker, you know, a blue team member, they may start being really mean and nasty and horrible to them. And these people who are the municipal workers, the state government workers, federal government workers, blue team members, they honestly cannot understand why everybody's being so mean to them. And I even saw a video, a news video today, where a blue team member, a policeman was trying to in fact, two policemen were trying to pull a driver out of a car, and this driver was parked with the doors open. The police had opened the doors. They were trying to pull this person out of their car. They threw the car into reverse, did a J-turn, which resulted in this police officer being flung about 20 metres and landing heavily on the side of another car in the car park. And then the person completed their J-turn and just sped off. And the comments underneath this video were like, wow, how rude and inconsiderate of that driver. And I'm like, what planet are these people living on? That driver clearly felt that driver clearly did not feel safe. They were in fear of their safety, and they did, in the moment, what needed to be done to get themselves out of that situation. And the blue team is probably looking for that driver. This is in Melbourne, by the way, the same city where recently police have made it a policy to smash people's windows and, drag them out of their cars and bash them if they won't hand over their driver's licenses or if they're not wearing a mask in their own car, okay? This is it. This is what is going on in Melbourne. And these people, these municipal workers, are in such a bubble that they can't see anything wrong with their behaviour. And that's a real problem, Vincent. And I think that that's going to create problems in the future. Because, if they don't have the serious mind to see that that's a problem, they're not going to be able to stop what they're doing, are they?
We've all been to the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Division of Motor Vehicles for registration, license, permits, renewals, those kinds of things. And I'm pretty darn certain that we've all experienced the same thing. Whether there's 3 people in line or 20 people in line, that the person behind the counter, the employee of the government, has no sense of urgency. Okay? Doesn't matter that there are other people in line. They just take their time. Now, contrast that to a store where you go in and there are people behind you. The cashier or the store employee looks and says, geez, I'd love to spend more time with you, but there's like 12 people behind you. Okay? So we're going to have to make this go faster. Okay, there is a sense of urgency in the private sector, and there is not a sense of urgency, at least as far as I've seen, in the government sector. David, do you agree or disagree with what I've just said?
I agree, and I can tell you I had to get a new ID. It took me a year, but the first time we went in there, you would be appalled. The DMV workers, 3 people came in when we were there to get plates for a new vehicle. This lady had no time to deal with it. She was having a bad day. She said, "You got another car?" "Yeah." "Take the plates off that car when you're not using it and just stick it on the other car." I don't have time to deal with you people today. I'm just in a bad mood. Where can you get that kind of service in any public place that is allowed? Now, those kids and those people that got those cars, they're going to be driving down the road with a license plates that link to a different vehicle. Now, a cop's going to be behind them. That's going to be a bad day. That cop's going to see, hey, that car, that's not registered to that plate. I'm not probably dealing with a stolen vehicle. Now, hostility's going to be right off the bat because this lady don't have time and she's had a bad day.
Government employees are generally not responsible for their recommendations. Now, here's an example. So, in the past, Mrs. Finelli and I we do our own taxes, we prepare our own taxes, and sometimes the instructions are clear. Most of the time, the instructions are not clear. Okay? The laws are not clear as to what you can and can't do. In the cases when it's ambiguous, we have had cause or reason to call the IRS and say, "Can you explain this to me? Because I can't figure this out." And we'll give them chapter and verse, and they will, if you ask them, Mary Jo, are you responsible for this answer? Okay, so if I get audited based on what you told me, are you responsible for that? And am I in the clear if I do what you've advised? And the answer is no. They're not responsible for what they tell you. So here's a government employee giving you the interpretation of what you can and can't do, and they're not responsible for it. That's the truth. And that's just one more reason why America and the rest of the world is on fire. Because we can't get straight answers. The government will tell us that we can't tell you about UFOs and aliens because you can't handle it. So we're not going to tell you if there are UFOs, and there are UFOs, no question about it, because a UFO is an unidentified flying object. But they won't tell you if there's extraterrestrial life because they don't think we can handle it. They don't think we can handle the truth about the coronavirus. They don't think we can handle anything at all. So they won't tell us the truth. So they have ministries of lies. And so did Adolf Hitler, the Ministry of Propaganda. We don't call it that in the United States. We call it ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, NPR. That's what we call it. And government briefings. We're not told the truth. And that's one more reason why the world is burning down. Because there's nobody to call, and we can't believe anything. Guineith?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I would like to make a bit of a comment here about what we can do for ourselves to cope with what is going on, okay? We need to psychologically toughen ourselves up, okay? We need to psychologically prepare for the world that is coming really quickly on all of us. And people who don't take the time to really sit and think and deal and process ahead of time mentally with the world that's coming into being now are going to crack apart psychologically in the future because they're not going to be able to deal with it.
All right, hold that thought. And we come back, your thoughts on what do we need to do to prepare. Class, we've been talking about Mad Max. We've been talking about society devolving. We're going the wrong direction. We don't believe that we're coming back anytime soon. In that regard, I'd like to ask Guineith first, then David. We've got about 6 minutes at the most, 2 minutes apiece. Guineith 2, David 2, I'll take 2. What do you recommend that people do in order to survive what we're facing? What do you recommend? And can you be specific if you can? I know that you have not prepared for this.
The single most important thing that people can do to prepare for what is coming is to prepare themselves in their mind for what is coming. That means you need to adjust to the new way of living and being in your mind now, even if you're in your last comfortable suburban home, okay? And that probably includes learning some sort of personal defense skills, and you can fill in the gaps of those yourself, okay? It may include learning martial arts. It may include learning weapon skills. But whatever it is going to include hardening your mind, okay? I think the best example is in the Terminator movie. If you watch the first Terminator movie, there's a character in that movie called Sarah Connor. And she is the mother of the guy who ends up being the great leader of the resistance, John Connor. Sarah Connor starts out as a regular girl living in a flat with a flatmate, and by the end of the first movie, she is well on her way to being hardened in her mind for the times that are coming ahead. Okay? And you have to harden yourself in your mind. You have to be aware that the people that you're facing, these blue team members, these soldiers, are hardened killers. They're trained to be hardened killers. And if you go in there with any other attitude other than, when I look at this guy, I'm looking at a hardened killer, or this girl, I'm looking at a hardened killer, then you're going to lose. And that's the simple truth of it. You have to get it in your mind that you are going to survive no matter what, and those survival skills include being able to find water, food, and shelter. They also, when you feel that you are threatened, when you have somebody attacking you, trying to take your resources, trying to take your life, you have to be able to take that person down. Okay? And like I said,
David?
Fill in the blank, make your own decisions. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes. David, your thoughts?
My opinion is you try to plan as much as you can ahead, get it whatever you can when you're out. But don't go with that plan exactly, because if you go to the store, you may find that something else is there in a greater supplies. Grab that instead of something else if it's on your. Be able to change the list, that go out with a priority, but know that priority can change according to when you get to where you're going, because it's very unpredictable every time you go out. And as much as
David's talking about David's talking about store what you need and a fluid environment and be situationally aware. I've told you what my thoughts are over the years. No change, and that is, you need to have food, water, shelter, nutrition, repair manuals, heating, spare parts, books, gardening, equipment, supplies, wire, plumbing, filters, oil, mobility, tools, welding rods, glues, adhesives, abrasives, paper, pencils. I mean, the list is endless. And you can find out what you need tonight by just turning off the electricity, sit in the dark with your family around the kitchen table. If you have a candle, you might want to light that if it's safe to do. And someone has a paper and pencil, and you write down what you think you need. And you won't believe what this list is. You'll be absolutely shocked at what you think that you need, because you'll realize that you might not be able to get it. And that's what you ought to concentrate on. Then prioritize that list. That's your homework, class. And it's been your homework for 10 years, at least from me. Very few have done it. Very few have turned off the electricity and seen how bad it is. But if you live in California, you don't have to worry about turning off your electricity. You don't have to worry about it at all. They're going to do it for you. And you are going to be subjected to a blackout. Then you can take your paper and pencil and write your list down. So you don't have to worry about scheduling your homework. They'll do it for you. You just don't know when it's going to happen. So for the rest of us, let's do the homework. Write down the list and get what you need to survive this. Because we here at USA Prepares are looking forward to seeing you on the other side of this mess. Guineith, thank you so much for being with us today. David, thank you for calling in and being with us. Class will be back tomorrow.